Imagine you're a country. Your economy is the size of Australia's. You have world-class universities, a highly educated workforce, and a tech industry that the entire planet depends on. Now imagine that one company, a single family-run conglomerate, accounts for more than 20% of your entire GDP. It's semiconductor. Factories are so critical that your own prime minister steps in front of cameras and warns that one day of disruption would cost your economy $670 million. Every single day. Now here's the part they don't talk about in the glossy economic reports: that company is losing the most important technology race of the 21st century. In 2025, Samsung's semiconductor operating profit collapsed by 56% in a single quarter. Its HBM chips, the specialized memory that every AI system in the world runs on, kept failing Nvidia's qualification tests. Its smaller domestic rival, SK Hynix, ate its lunch. TSMC took its foundry business. And its workforce, all 47,000 unionized workers, threatened to walk off the job in what would have been the largest labor strike in the history of the global semiconductor industry. South Korea built its entire economic identity around one company. And that company is cracking. The question isn't whether this is a problem. The question is whether it is actually fixable. And that answer, when you dig into the data, is not what anyone in Seoul wants to hear. So here's exactly what we're going to cover today. First, how did one company end up with this much power over an entire nation's economy? Second, what is actually going wrong at Samsung, and why is this particular crisis different from the ones before? Third, why the structure of South Korea's economy makes this problem structurally impossible to solve in any reasonable time frame. And fourth, what the endgame actually looks like. To understand how South Korea ended up here, you have to go back to the 1960s. South Korea was poorer than Ghana. No natural resources. A population still recovering from one of the most destructive wars in modern history. The government, under Park Chung-hee, made a calculated bet. Pick a handful of industrial conglomerates, give them cheap state credit, protect them from foreign competition, and push them to export at all costs. These were the chaebols. Samsung started as a grocery trading company. Then it moved into textiles, then electronics, then semiconductors. Each move was state-directed, state-backed, and protected by policy. By the 1980s, it was in everything: construction, insurance, hospitals, apartment buildings. Today, Samsung's construction arm built the Burj Khalifa. Its display division supplies Apple. Its semiconductor fabs are the backbone of global server infrastructure. By 2022, Samsung Group's affiliated companies posted revenue equivalent to 22.4% of South Korea's entire GDP. Not profit. Revenue. The number itself is almost cartoonish. For context, if Samsung Group were a standalone economy, it would rank among the top 50 countries in the world by GDP. And here's the structural trap: because Samsung grew so dominant, so fast, it essentially crowded everything else out. 80% of South Korea's GDP is attributable to chaebols as a whole. Samsung exports alone account for nearly 23% of the country's total exports. The South Korean startup ecosystem, the mid-size company layer, the SME base that every healthy economy needs, it never fully developed, because Samsung and its cousins absorbed all the talent, all the capital, and all the government attention. South Korea didn't just build a company. It built a monodependency. Think of it this way. Imagine a small town. The town has one factory. The factory employs most of the working-age population. The factory's tax revenue pays for the schools, the roads, and the hospital. The factory owner sits on the school board, owns the local newspaper, and his family built the football stadium. Now one day, a newer, more efficient factory opens in the next town over. Your factory still operates. It still pays wages. But it's starting to fall behind. And here's the thing no one says out loud: the town has absolutely no idea how to survive without it. That is South Korea. Samsung is the factory. And the new factory in the next town? That's TSMC. That's SK Hynix. That's Nvidia designing its own in-house silicon. Now let's talk about what's actually broken at Samsung. The semiconductor business has two key divisions, memory chips and foundry, which is the business of manufacturing chips designed by other companies. On memory, Samsung was supposed to be the dominant player in HBM. High bandwidth memory, the chip architecture that AI servers cannot function without. The problem, Samsung's HBM3E chips kept failing. Nvidia's thermal qualification tests throughout 2024 and into 2025. SK Hynix, its smaller Korean rival, secured the dominant supply position. With Nvidia, Micron moved in behind. Samsung went from being the assumed winner in the AI memory race to a company scrambling to qualify its products. In Q2 of 2025, its semiconductor division's operating profit dropped 94% year-on-year. The foundry arm, the business of making chips for clients like Apple, Qualcomm, and Tesla, was projected to post an operating loss of 4.8 trillion won for the full year 2025, according to CLSA. Meanwhile, TSMC has widened its lead so aggressively in advanced logic chips that Samsung's foundry business is structurally subscale. Without major clients, you can't run a profitable foundry. Without a profitable foundry, you can't fund the R&D to win clients back. It is a very expensive negative feedback loop. The company has announced a $460 billion investment plan running through 2030, including a massive chip cluster in Yangon designed to produce 7.7 million silicon wafers per month. That's a staggering commitment. It's also a bet that requires things to go right for a very long time. Here's where most analysis gets it wrong. The common assumption is that Samsung's problems are cyclical. Chip markets go up, chip markets go down. Samsung's been through this before. It survived the 2023 memory downturn, it came back in 2024, and its Q4 2025 results were actually a record high in revenue at 93.8 trillion. 1. So surely, the narrative goes, it will recover again. That is precisely the wrong lesson to take from this. What's different this time is not the cycle. It's the technology transition. The move from commodity memory chips to AI-specific architectures like HBM, and from mature chip nodes to cutting-edge logic below 3 nanometers, is not a recovery story. It's a new game. And in that new game, first-mover advantage compounds. Every quarter that SK Hynix ships HBM to Nvidia and Samsung doesn't, the engineering relationship deepens. Every quarter that TSMC runs advanced logic at scale and Samsung's foundry doesn't, the yield gap widens. The Bank of Korea already revised its GDP growth forecast downward by 1.2 percentage points, directly attributable to Samsung's semiconductor slump. A strike alone in 2026 could cut GDP growth by 0.5 percentage points. The macro is tethered to one company's operational calendar. And then there's the human cost beneath the headline numbers. As of early 2026, roughly 470,000 young Koreans are classified as resting, neither employed nor actively seeking work. Among 67 major Korean corporations, the share of employees in their 20s fell from nearly 25% in 2022 to 21% in 2024. Samsung is restructuring, not hiring. The chaebol engine that used to absorb Korea's educated young is running in reverse. So why is this unsolvable? Because the solution to Samsung's dominance is diversification. Building a deeper, broader economic base with more companies, more sectors, more SMEs. Every economist agrees on this. The OECD has been saying it since 2018. Korean academics have been writing about it since the 1997 financial crisis. But diversification takes 20 years minimum. It requires breaking the structural advantages that the chaebols hold over capital allocation, labor markets, and political influence. It requires regulators who are willing to stop competing for Samsung's next factory announcement and start enforcing actual market competition. And it requires Samsung itself to fail just enough to create space for Alternatives which the Korean government will never allow, because Samsung failing is a national emergency. That is the trap. Samsung is too important to reform around and too exposed to fail. The country needs it to succeed, but its success eliminates the conditions needed to build a healthier economy beneath it. One day of semiconductor disruption, $670 million in losses. 1 quarter of chip underperformance, 1.2 percentage points off national GDP. 1 labor dispute involving 47,000 workers, potential losses between 30 and 100 trillion won. South Korea has built itself a beautiful, terrifying, 1 point of failure economy. And the people running it know it. They just have no idea what to do about it. If you want to understand how Korea got here from the ground up, the full Chaebol story, the Park Chung-hee economic model, and why the 1997 crisis changed nothing fundamental, I did a deep dive on that. Check it out right here. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.